Bruno. Yeah, we're live. It is 11:10. I'm here in the afternoon. Hopefully everybody's doing well, and hopefully everybody had a good Father's Day. So shout out and happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Excuse me for yesterday. We had a good time. It was great. We got to go see Lisa's parents and stuff. So we had a little barbecue, and so it was good. Today we want to talk about intake manifolds and specifically turbo manifolds. So manifolds that are designed for boost. And even more specifically than that, the cross ram manifold, wow, here, open up the church and here's all the people. Is that what it is? The cross ram manifold that I did a test on way back, and I've tested two of them. I tested the Edelbrock version, which was for the cathedral port headed stuff. And that was a cast aluminum piece. And then I also tested the fabricated sheet metal or aluminum piece, if you will, from HOLLEY. And that was for a cathedral port application. So the photo that I have up is the cathedral port version. And it's kind of cool. I mean, cross rams look awesome. There's no doubt about that. It has dual throttle bodies, which makes it twice as cool as any manifold that has a single throttle body. So right off the bat, even from a coolness standpoint, you pop the hood on that, and it's, it has a cool factor going for it. So a lot of guys would want it just for that. But what I want to talk about is what would make it a turbo manifold. So we got to figure out what a manifold design is and what makes it, because we see that all the time. Oh, this one's good for boost. Okay. what makes it that? And here's my take on that, and other guys might have differences of opinion on this, but for me, the manifold doesn't care about boost. We know that in the same way that we know about camshafts, is that if we run boost on whatever manifold you have, you don't even have to tell me what it is. If you run boost on it, the same thing is going to happen as it happened when it was NA. It doesn't all of a sudden get way better. I mean, it gets way better because of the boost, but it would get way better because of the boost no matter what manifold was there. Whatever's there, the boost is just going to multiply what's there. So if you have a manifold, and for me, manifolds are much more about RPM. So they're designed to run in an effective RPM range. So they're designed to be real effective in that RPM range. And then there are some that are better than others because of flow rate and taper and the design of the entry and various things. Those are all micro things that you would look at to try to tailor something specifically for your application. But in a general sense, if you pick a manifold like in this case, we compared it to the truck manifold. So if you take the truck manifold and you run the truck manifold and then you run it with boost, and you run it with, like, if we pick an S475 turbo, that would be like 1,000 horsepower turbo, you can make 1,000 horsepower with that truck manifold. You don't need to change the manifold to make the power. It will do it with that manifold. The reason that you would want to change the manifold is if you want to make more NA power, or you want to change where you make that power. So if a truck manifold with your combination makes peak power at 6,300 RPM, let's say you've got a mild cam and a truck manifold and stock heads, when you run it NA, it makes peak power at 6,300 RPM. Okay, that's fine. Let's say you want to make power at 7,000. Okay, well, the easiest way to do that, you could change the cam. That would help. But even if you change the cam and you have that manifold on there, it's going to be really hard to push it out that far. The easy way to do that is to put a shorter runner manifold on that. Now, typically what happens is on a shorter runner manifold usually flows more air, but that's not why it makes power at a higher engine speed. It doesn't make it because of flow rate. And in fact, it might flow the same, but it's still going to make power at a higher engine speed because of this reflected wave thing that we've talked about many, many times. A pressure wave travels up and back the length of the runner. So when it arrives back down with a positive pressure cylinder filling, supercharging effect, when that arrives relative to the piston position is going to be dictated by RPM, because it takes a certain amount of time for this pressure wave to travel as a negative pressure wave and then as a positive pressure wave. It takes a certain amount of time for that to happen. Well, in that time during that travel, the piston's moving. And so you want it to arrive down when the piston's down near bottom dead center, when there's no charge filling happening because the piston has already drawn all of this stuff down. It's done doing its like mechanical leveraging and drawing air in. So this is when the supercharging effect is most effective. So if you can get that to happen at the right RPM, the problem is that when you change the runner length, you change when that thing arrives, because it's traveling a shorter distance. It takes a shorter period of time. It arrives earlier. Well, if you want it to arrive at the right time, you have to put that position in the right spot, and that means engine speed. So at engine speeds, at the right engine speed, this pressure wave travels up and back its shorter distance and arrives at the right time at a faster speed. Longer runners have a longer trip. It's shorter. It's a longer distance. It takes a longer amount of time, so it's more effective at a lower engine speed. So intake manifolds do that regardless of boost. Even under boost, they're still going to want to make power at or near the same engine speed. The only thing, the way you can alter that is if you have a rising boost curve, like we've talked about with centrifugal blowers or an electronic boost controller. So, in my opinion, intake manifolds, excuse me, are not specific to boost or not boost. What I want to talk about is how this cross ram would help in a boosted application. And the reason that it helps in a boosted application has everything to do with how well this intake manifold does naturally aspirated. So what did it do naturally aspirated? Well, I can take a look at the dyno results here, and we can see that when we compared it, this was on a 6-liter with a cam in it. When we compared it on the 6-liter, we compared it to the factory truck manifold, the early truck, not the Trailblazer SS. But on the early truck manifold, this cross ram from HOLLEY with 2 throttle bodies on it made more power than the truck manifold everywhere, which is unique in that that's hard to do. It's not hard for it to make more, for a short runner manifold to make more power on the top, or even if there ever was a really, really long runner manifold, make more power down low. It's hard to get both of those things to happen, and this manifold did it, which like I said, is exceedingly rare. And to give you an idea, down at 32 or 3,300 RPM, we went from 386 to 430. So 44 foot-pounds of torque. And it had more torque than the stock manifold. We only loaded it down at 3,000 or 2,900 RPM. From there, basically, it had more torque everywhere, but it had a good amount of torque gain up to about 44 or 4,500 RPM. Then the difference, the smallest difference between the two was 476 to 483. So about 6 foot-pounds for a narrow range. And then it got a little bit better. And then on the top, we're looking at 524 versus 536. So 12 or 13 horsepower on the peak. So it had more power at the top, had a lot more torque down low. And the reason why I would recommend this as a turbo combination or as a turbo manifold is because of this added torque down low. So if you're making more low speed power down low, which this manifold does, what you would do would be greatly enhance boost response. And so this would become, it's not quite as critical on a 6-liter that's already making, where was this thing at? It was already, it was over 350 foot-pounds of torque, even at 3,000 RPM. It was over 4,000 at 30, or over 400 foot-pounds of torque, at least with a HOLLEY manifold, by 3,200 RPM. So it's making enough torque down low to spool up a reasonable turbo. And so this would become more critical. On a 6-liter, it has a lot of low speed power. And so it can spool any kind of reasonable 1,000 horsepower or less kind of turbo with fairly good effectiveness. This would become more critical on a 4.8 or a 5.3, where you wanted to spool that same kind of turbo. So a 1,000 horsepower turbo on a 6-liter, it's going to spool up fairly well with almost anything. This thing would help it spool better, especially if you had a T6 version of that turbo. This manifold would help it spool a lot better because an extra 30 or 40 foot-pounds of torque is all just exhaust energy and flow going to the turbo to make more power. So that would all be good. So if you want the thing to be responsive, more low speed torque, that's exactly what this cross ram did, and you would get that. On a 6 liter, not quite as critical, like I said, because you already have lots of low speed power there. If you're trying to do it with a 4.8 or a 5.3, then it becomes more important. Then you don't have enough with the stock manifold, and then the added 30 or 40 foot-pounds of torque might mean you do have enough. Whereas with a 6 liter, you probably already had enough, and now you've got more than enough to spool up a turbo. And again, obviously, this is all going to depend on the size of the turbo. But what it would do, what this manifold would do, is it would obviously add power everywhere, and that gain gets kind of multiplied. But it would also allow you to get much better spool on a good sized turbo, and guys want that. I mean, everybody wants. We all want immediate boost response, and then the ability to make more than 1,000 horsepower. Everybody wants all that, and then 50 miles per gallon, and all, perfect drivability, or chop when we want the thing to chop. All those things. So the way that you go about getting that is having, if you can get more low speed power like this manifold does, and then you have your turbo size, and then you have your engine size. If the bigger the engine is, the easier it is to have that combination of all of those things. But for smaller motors, 4.8s and 5.3s, you have to try to enhance low speed power. And that's the other thing that unfortunately is negatively affected by like a cam change for most of us, is that if we have a 4.8 or a 5.3, particularly a 4.8, if we put a camshaft in it, we're probably not going to get gains at 2,000 or 2,500 or maybe even 3,000 RPM. It's really hard to get torque gains there with a camshaft. We're going to get lots of them at 4,500, 5,000 on out to 6,000, 6,500 RPM. We're going to get lots of gains out there, and it's going to make more power at the same boost level out there, but it's not going to help response. So having these kinds of manifolds would be beneficial in terms of boost response, and particularly on the smaller motors. This thing made peak power on this 6 liter at 6,300 RPM. Yeah, 63. Yeah, it made almost the same at 63 and 6,400 RPM. So it's allowing it to rev too. It's not like it's just killing all the top end power. And this would obviously, the RPM potential with this manifold, as we went down in displacement, that number would go up too. So you could rev it even higher on a 4.8 or a 5.3. So you'd have definitely lots of effective RPM range. But the added torque down low is really nice. Now, there are some downsides to this kind of manifold. One being that you have to run 2 throttle bodies. So 2 throttle bodies is going to be more expensive. The thing is that really, because you're using 2 of them, 2 stock throttle bodies would be more than enough for this. Even if it's 2 78 millimeter throttle bodies, if you had adapters, because I think that the openings on these were designed for 90s or 92s. We ran 2 90s on it, or 2 92s, let's say. We ran manual ones, but it would probably be easier to do 2 drive-by wires and then split the signal with that X-Link thing, so that you could, because the problem becomes doing the linkage to get the linkage to work and have them both open at the same rate and all that. So if you can do that electronically, that's easier, but it is problematic. So it's more expensive unless you use stock throttle bodies. And then getting to figure out how we can get those 2 synced up. But I think that they kind of have that cured by now. Ideally, symmetrically, this would be nice with a twin turbo setup, because, having 2 throttle bodies and 2 turbos just looks twice as cool. So that would be better. You could run a Y pipe or you could run an intercooler with a single in from a single turbo, and then 2 out of the intercooler, and then, 1 to each one of the throttle bodies. You could make all that work, and it would look pretty cool. But those are all things that you would need to consider when you're doing that. And then with the 2 turbos, 2 wastegates and all that stuff, if you wanted to do twins would be cool, because like I said, twin throttle bodies, all of that would be kind of awesome with this particular manifold. I think Matt from Sloppy is running one of these, and I would assume, based on these dyno results, that he should probably be having pretty good luck with it. And the nice thing about it is, even though we have the negative aspects of the dual throttle body stuff, But if you pop the hood on this thing, I mean, it's so much better looking than any kind of truck manifold. You know, that we don't want to throw too much shade on the truck manifold. Lots of guys out there running really, really fast with them, and they make a lot of power, and they come free with your junkyard motor, which is the right kind of pricing that we want to see. But this particular manifold I liked because, like I said, low speed power, it enhanced it quite a bit and didn't sacrifice the top. So that kind of trade-off is pretty normal with intake manifolds. But this manifold, like all the other ones, other than the thing that we were talking about with the low speed power, definitely improving boost response. It's not really a turbo manifold. It's just a manifold. They kind of all do that. So let's see what you guys got going on. Let's see. Start a poll. Okay, let's see. Okay, would you go to the trouble of working with the dual throttle bodies to run the HOLLEY cross ram? Would you deal with that issue of the dual throttle bodies just so you could run this kind of manifold? You know, because like we said, a dual throttle body cross ram, pretty cool. Hang on a second. Hey, Owen, I have your charger in here. Ugh. Let's see. Here we go. Turbo manifold. Yes. Taylor, what's going on? Eric. No, is that for Cleveland? No, not for Cleveland. This one was for an LS, but you could do it for a Cleveland. It'd just be a little bit more involved, but you know, they had cross rams for the Weber setups, I think, for Cleveland's. Yeah, definitely style points for this manifold. It looks good. I mean, the interesting thing too is that the manifold, when they weld it together, the way that the design is that because it interlocks. So the two pieces that has to be welded together with the two pieces like configured like that. They don't weld them together and then put them together like that. So that's interesting for the welder guy. Where's the 2.2 stuff? Yeah, that we do need to run some of that. Adult refreshment weekend. That's good, Eric. Only bought an oil cooler and filter relocation kit. What are you putting that on, Turbo Sentra? Is that on your Sentra or is that on the V8? Getaway. Would the length of a runner from a remote mounted turbo have any effect on intake or runner power range? No, the distance from the turbo to the manifold is not going to determine effective RPM range. Jacked up videos. You think turbo lag is fun? Cross-arm manifold should allow for a better intake pulse on a flat plane crank as well. I don't know why that would be the case. I wish the 0304 Terminator manifolds actually had runner length. Yeah, most of the blower stuff, the positive displacement blower stuff, is not going to have runner length. We've seen some that I think Edelbrock had some where the runners came up on the top. And then I think that the Cadillac one was kind of like that. It'd be better if it did because it definitely makes more torque. Although in a lot of cases for OEM applications where they're not interested in the extra power that they'd have. In fact, what they do is it has enough just from the blower and they're taking it away not only with that manifold design, a lot of that's just packaging, but also with the camshaft. In the case of like the LSA or the LS9 camshaft, particularly the LS9 camshaft, is it definitely is soft down low, but maybe that helps with detonation and stuff. Second downside is the material. It's aluminum. How come that's a downside? Twin 92s is a lot of air volume. Yeah, it's a lot of flow. I mean, the 192 millimeter would flow enough to support the power level that we were at on this motor. So two of them is more than you need. What about performance designs? XR from Texas Speed. But a performance design intake manifold wasn't designed by the guys at Texas Speed. They're just selling that manifold. Is that what you're asking? Would the sides need to be balanced? On the Edelbrock intake manifold, they had a balance tube. This HOLLEY did not, though. Todd, the Trail 90 is doing fine. I just need, and I just haven't yet. I haven't ordered the new kickstart lever for it. You want to do dual cross ram velocity stacks? So I've done cross rams, cross ram IR stuff. I have videos up on that. How would you normally read manifold pressure between the two plenums? You could you could take a vacuum reading from both and run it to a T and then run that T over to your map sensor. Or actually you could take it from either one. When we did the testing, we just took it from one of them. Currently trying to find a shop to help mill the top of the intake off my 8.1 for the Hellcat blower. I need to find a drive-by-wire throttle body big enough for this thing. You should be able to find 102s or 105s that are drive-by-wire. Also, I think that Kenny Bell or AccuFab probably has big oval throttle bodies that are drive-by-wire. Ordered myself an LH2 North Star engine the other day. Where did you order it? Did you order it like at a wrecking yard or something? I don't think it'd be hard if you did throttle by wire. You would just series your electrical connections if you don't have a dual output. Todd, you're still waiting on your heads, so they're being machined or something? Can't wait for boost on the LT1. Yeah, Brandon, I need to figure out what's going on with that. Why it didn't make the power that I thought it should with the stock manifold on it. The oil temperature is 400 degrees on the dyno. Something's going on there. Think of changing the location of the turbo feed to feed off the pan down by the filter. We've done that a lot. Tim, what's going on? I'm building a cross ram top for volleyball ultra low ram. Theory of the dual plenum running on a K series extra plenum for fuel distribution. I can vary runner length. Okay. The change in runner length is definitely going to have an effect on power. The performance design carbon XR from Texas Speed. Why is it from Texas Speed? Performance design is their only is the name of the company that makes the manifold. But why are you throwing Texas Speed in there? Is it only available from them? Did they design it, or what's going on? Tim, what Summit Pro LS piston would you select to replace a stock LM7 setup with 706 heads for compression? I'd like to run 93 and occasionally E85. I would run flat tops and probably flat tops with valve release. That way you could run more camshaft. Do you know what size turbo you're going to run on the LT1 when you get around to trying it? I have a bunch of different ones that I can run. We have turbos that go from, well, the smallest one is 250 horsepower, and the biggest one is probably 1500 or something. I don't know what the big one that I don't know how big the big one is that the Viren sent from VS Racing, but something that's going to be like the GT45 would be 700 horsepower. I'm not going to try to run a bunch of power with it. It would certainly be less than 1,000. That's what it was with a thermal gun. 400 degrees from a dyno test seems like way problematic. Currently building a Gen 133 with a B&M 144. Running Summit Hot Cam Plus. Plan to run 1.5 intake and 1.6 exhaust split ratio rockers to get the exhaust duration. Are you on the right track? I don't think that that's the right track. If you're going to put different rockers on, I would put both of them on there. Favoring the exhaust is not going to give you you would make more power if you put them on the intake. The North Star was reduced price by 50%. It cost $450. Where did you get it from? Was it a wrecking yard online or something? And then what are you going to do with it, Eric? What are you going to put it in? Oh, you got it on eBay? Performance Design Carbon XR LS7 intake manifold. Gen 4. It lost all oil pressure when smoking like crazy. It has no water in it. Uh-oh. That's not good. Any insight on actual runner length and inches to maximize power at 6,500 RPM? Is that where you want to make peak power? And what's the displacement of the what displacement are you talking about? And what camshaft are you talking about? And what cylinder head are you talking about? Yeah, I'm familiar with the performance design stuff. I've tested a lot of their manifolds. That's why I was asking you why why you're attaching Texas Speed to that. I didn't know, because if you look up performance design, if you look at that intake, I'm sure that intake manifold is on their thing. Yeah, those manifolds, those carbon manifolds, are not are pricey. Although it's interesting, the thing about the aluminum manifold, aluminum is very conductive, but again, I don't agree with the fact that it imparts temperature into the charge temperature. Not at wide open throttle. The air is just going by too fast. I don't think it changes that air temperature very much. Frank, you got your lifters, cool. Todd, good. I hope you're feeling better, man. That stack is this weekend. I know. I can't believe it's been a year since I've been back there. That was a fun deal. That means I need to go get my car. We do need more 2.2 dyno stuff. I need to get back on the dyno with that stuff and get it working. I'm excited about running more testing on the Metro also. I'm thinking about buying a tow dolly because I'm going to be using it a lot, and I'd like one of the foldable ones so I could store it easily. Holly Strip Dominator Victor Jr. For what kind of motor are you talking about? What is the engine family? What is the application? Totally suck for a lot of reasons. Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't. I will never get a trailer, so that's out. And the tow dolly I've used for the Metro a couple of times now, and for the Dodge, and it's worked perfect for small cars. I don't have a problem with tow dollies at all. What about a used U-Haul tow dolly? $11.01 drag race. Turner, I think I would look at a Super Victor for that. I don't have a place to put a trailer. I don't have a place to store that, so that's out. But the truck that I have will tow it. I mean, it's only 1,500, but for little cars like that, it's not an issue. And on a tow dolly, it's even easier. Turbocentric, yeah, 400 seems like a lot to me. I've never seen 400-degree oil temperatures on anything that didn't break the motor. We've seen 350 on stuff. When I was running my Corvette, when I was road racing the Corvette, we could get oil temps up around 350 when we were really getting after it, and we were in Vegas and it was hot out and it was a road course. But 400 would be, the oil would just break down at 400. Turner, I guess you could port it if you want. I don't know what heads you have and whether or not that will match up. I don't know that there's any power there, even if you did, but what you really need is to load the family dogs and all for a National Lampoon style to get the Omni. Yeah, they're not really good for long trips. I'm the only one that puts up with that. Yeah, and Turbo Sentra, like I said, this was for lap after lap after lap out in the heat. Of really pushing the car hard. A chassis dyno test or whatever should not ever get the temperature that hot. Looking for another intake for the project. The Daily has a TBSS I modified, but since I'm boosting the project, I'm looking for an affordable, cleaner looking intake like a high ram. Admiral, what's going on? Prestige. I just took a big trip of stuff over to the storage. I've got cams in stock. Got some LS3 heads if somebody's interested in some LS3 heads. The old install manual recommends 24 to 25 total advance for the 144. The timing that you would use would be a function of what the NA timing is, what the thing runs best at, NA timing, and then what octane you're using and stuff. Admiral, you've been putting a used engine in an Explorer. Is it a 5-liter Explorer or is it a modular one? KM, I'm watching your plethora of videos and learning so much from past years. Thank you. Question: twin eBay GT45s at 8 psi on a bone stock 302. Ring gap needed for daily driver. Yes, ring gap is always recommended for a turbo application. Also, do not run twin GT45s. They're way too big for what you're doing there. A single GT45 is more than big enough for what you're doing. A single GT45 is a 750 horsepower turbo. And if you have a stock 302, you're not going to be anywhere near that. You're going to be 500 horsepower or something. And you're going to have to run you'd have to run a lot of pressure to do that. But twin GT45s at 8 psi would be laggy and they would be terrible. You would be unhappy with it. If you want to put twins on it and only run 8 pounds, I would put twin GT3076s on it probably. I've locked out timing, was keeping it there. Yeah, the locked out timing problem is that the blowers, those positive displacement blowers make low speed boost really good. And the problem is high timing and low speed boost is not a good combination. It's definitely more prone to detonation. The thing that helps you is that on those blowers, you're having fuel go through the blower, which is, charge cooling, and that's beneficial. But it would be better if you had a distributor that had a curve in it, at least, even just a centrifugal one that's not, a vacuum advanced deal. It'd be nice if you had boost retard, but 2013 front wheel drive Explorer with a 3.2 Duratec. Okay. Locked out timing, was looking at keeping it there. Yeah. Somebody let me know. We've got to get another car for Lisa. So we're looking at Explorers, or one of them that we're looking at. But what else would you guys recommend? Anyone here boost a Honda D series? Yeah, a lot. Just how good are the stock sleeves? How much power are you trying to make? Any concern about blowback with single GT40? I don't know what you mean. What do you mean by blowback? Uh, 300 at the tire is not. You don't need to worry about the stock sleeves there. I think when we did a D series, 300 at the tire was the right turbo, an intercooler, big enough injectors. I think we tried putting a cam in it. I think we ran a Crowder cam. I don't know that was necessary, but it helps. And then head studs and gaskets, and then boost. If you get an Explorer, the rear-wheel drive 2.3 ones are fantastic. Avoid escapes at all costs. Okay, good to know. I would really want a 2-wheel drive one because we don't ever use 4-wheel drive for stuff. Back pressure at 8 psi. No, you on a GT45 on a stock 302, you're going to have very little back pressure. Yeah, Getaway. You don't have to sleeve it. We've run boost on those a lot. I ran a Jackson Racing supercharger at like 12 or 13 pounds on there. I don't recommend it, but the turbo stuff is much easier on it. We were trying to go 150 miles an hour in one of those things with a Jackson Racing supercharger on there, and it was it was an exercise in frustration. So we needed to make more than 200 horsepower at the tire, and it was hard pressed to do that with a little. I think we had an M45 on it or something. It was pretty small. Lots of water methanol injection stuff. Yeah, Getaway. I wrote a couple books on, and there was D series stuff in that. Lisa actually was a D series owner. She had a Bay Civic with a D series in it. You might look at Toyota and Lexus SUVs. Yeah, her parents have those too. They bought Lexus hybrids. She has a Mercedes now, but we would like something that's different than that. Maybe not as expensive would be nice. Toyota Camry with a turbo. Toyota used prices are high like Hondas. Yeah, because they have a really good residual value. That's because both of those hold their value for a long time. They last a long time, so they're still plenty valuable. Also, the newer rear-wheel drive 2.3 Explorers are much easier to work on than the V6s or any of the front-wheel drive stuff. What about the Broncos? Do they have the EcoBoost Broncos? Former police cruisers, they had CO2 issues. They suck it in from the back of the car. How would they get it inside the car unless the back window was open? I mean, that was a problem with, I remember riding in station wagons with the back glass down. It was like that. Well, then you're the guy to ask. I saw an article about D-Series head flow, and supposedly the Z6 head flow is the best. I currently have a D16Y8. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I didn't ever flow all of the stock heads when we were doing that testing, so I don't know what it is. And quite honestly, if one head flows 8 or 10 CFM more than the other, which would kind of surprise me given the Honda stuff, if one of those is that much better, it's not going to make any difference to you on a turbo application. Because that's not something you couldn't get by just porting the one that you have, just doing some very easy bowl cleanup. So I don't think that I would swap out a different head. I traded the Mercedes for a Honda SUV. We had a Pilot long ago, and we loved it. It was one of our favorite cars. I just don't like the look of the new Pilots. Hatch closed. Car Wizard on YouTube with auto repair and did a test with smoke. This was years after the police came. Poisoning and blackouts while driving. So how is it? How did they determine that it was getting in? What's open that would allow exhaust to get in? Because it is a low pressure area back behind the car while the car's traveling. No, and I don't know if this is while the thing is idling, or if it's while it's driving. If I was SUV shopping, I'd be looking at Toyota Highlanders. Yeah, my mom has a Highlander. Rear drive Explorers and Broncos. Yeah. She saw a couple of Broncos. She liked those. The hatch seal wasn't making contact for some reason. Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be problematic. I like the way the police Explorers look too. They're all blacked out. Kind of dig that. They claimed it was 5% better than all their castings ported. I found that hard to believe. So, but are you saying that it was better after it was ported? So that you could get more out of it once it's ported? That's not something that I would even be worried about. Because then I would, a 5% variance between one guy that ports it and another guy that ports it would not be uncommon at all. So that's not something I'd be concerned about. I try to find a reasonable camshaft for it. And what I like to do on VTEC motors is I like to have the primary cam still be stock or very close to stock, and then have the secondary cam be bigger, because I'm only caring about performance when I'm in the when I'm in VTEC anyways. So, and then all you have to do is change VTEC operation to, when you have that kind of combination, a little bit later, to have VTEC actuate a little bit later so that it doesn't drop in power. And with the turbo stuff, you know, as long as you get a responsive turbo, it's pretty easy to make power. Explorer has my sister has an Explorer ST. I like those. We've had an Explorer before. The new rear-wheel drive 2.3 and 2.7 and 3-liter EcoBoost engines are proving to be quite reliable. The only issue I've heard with the Broncos are from the mods and heavy use killing the automatic transmissions. She won't ever even take it off road. I mean, it's not gonna, and we're not gonna do any modifications to it. So the article said untouched Z6 was 5% better than ported from all the other castings. I would find that hard to believe that a factory head would be better than a ported other factory head, but I can't really speak to that, having not flowed them. Just learning or trying, basically. Yeah, you got to do the super richy. If you get a turbo on there and get the air fuel right and the timing right, then good things will happen. Any chance of towing? No, Lisa won't ever tow with her vehicle, because I have the truck for that. We'd like to not, what I'd like is a 2-wheel drive. I don't want a 4-wheel drive. And I'd like it to be not heavy duty, so that we would just like it to get good mileage for her. She just drives it around. A turbo one would be cool though, just because, you know, turbo. You know, because we're all about that boost. I wonder does anybody know what kind of weight you're supposed to put in the back of a truck? Is there a maximum amount of weight that you can carry in the back of a truck? If just commuting a Prius? No, she's not going to do that. We need something that she can have the kids in and the dogs too. Grand Cherokee. Yeah, the payload capacity, I guess. Door sticker will give you the information. Okay. Lack of gains when porting by beginners certainly isn't uncommon. Yeah, particularly with Honda stuff. I've seen a lot of guys ruin Honda heads. The 10R60 is in the smaller engine Explorers. It's about as strong as a 4L60. That's not good. 3rd gen 4Runner. All of those are good. She likes Dodge Challengers too. Although it's not the same thing. The Mopar 3.6s run hot, and the Hemi gets lifter tick. New to VTEC, can you kind of control it when it comes on? Yeah, there are VTEC controllers. I haven't looked at one in years and years and years, but they probably still have them. You can control with Honda or Chrome or any of these Honda tuning things. You can control when VTEC kicks in, the activation RPM, like on the B series stuff. If I remember right, I think it was 5,200 or 5,300 or something. And then You just want to get it so that there's not a drop in power when it happens, and then there's not a big jump in power when it happens. If there's a jump in power, that means you didn't activate it early enough. If there's a drop in power, that means you activated it too soon. And so you got to extend it out. You just got to find out where the curve is the smoothest at that activation. And the thing is, when you're tuning this, you got to make sure that when you're tuning it and you go into VTech, that you're tuning it on the VTech program, because you don't want to keep tuning it on the primary cam program, because that's not going to do anything. It's not going to show anything. Forerunner to get bad mileage. I would imagine. At least this is not too bad. Her Mercedes is not too bad. And it's a turbo, so it's good. What about the Chevy versions of those? What are they, Traverses or something? What are the SUVs? Not a Tahoe or a Suburban. Something smaller than that. Would a 3-port or 4-port Mac valve be the easiest boost setup with a HOLLEY ECU? I currently only use wastegate spring on the street car. Not looking for crazy boost numbers. I get confused. If you like what just the wastegate is doing, and with a vacuum and boost reference line to it, then just stay with that. You can do boost control on it if you want to get clever with it. Or if you want to hold basically what you're doing, the nice thing about the controller is that you're holding the wastegate closed until it reaches the actual boost number. It's not starting to open early. So you just pick up a lot of power in that very narrow range when the wastegate starts to open. But then you can control the boost, better than just a spring and a gate do, if you want to do that. But we only ever used a 3-port, I think, when we were doing it. I have an 03 Accord 2.4 manual flood car, getting the drivetrain in an X19 cart. Oh, that'll be cool. Yeah, definitely send me pictures of that. I want to see that. That's very cool. I was working on a V12 Mercedes the other day. The water pump was $2,500. Ouch. I know, and I wanted one of those. I wanted a CLS, but that's why I didn't want to get a used one. They're just having to. The Traverses are not good. I saw one of those today. Yeah. Saw one of those today on my run. I like the CLS. It was a good looking car. It's a gangster mobile, definitely. But it was cool that it was a twin turbo deal, and you could make a lot of power with it with, programmers or whatever. But still, it was. I liked them. I saw what guys were doing with them, how much power they were making. It was pretty impressive. But I wouldn't want to be the guy that has to pay for the stuff that goes wrong. Same thing with BMWs. We've had BMWs before, which I like, but I don't want to be the guy that has to pay to repair them. Avoid the Traverse unless it's a V6. Yeah, we wouldn't get a V8 one. Can't get the valves just right on my 5-liter. Too tight. I get no compression. Too loose. I get okay compression, but the rockers pop off. What year 5-liter is this, Wes? If it's like a 302 5-liter, like the original one, that should be very, very simple. It should be just a half a turn, unless you're doing a Coyote. Nitrous isn't too expensive to maintain. 86 out of a Thunderbird. That should be very, very easy. You shouldn't. I don't know how you're adjusting that, but All you need to do is get the lobe on the heel and then put a half a turn in it. It's really, really simple. And if you're a quarter or you're 3/4, it doesn't matter. That won't hold the valve open. So I'm wondering if you're adjusting it with the valve in the wrong spot. BMW N20 26 4-cylinder turbo. Are you asking if I've ever run one of those, or you're saying that I should get a car that has one of those? If you have a junkyard LS that keeps adding pressure in the cooling system after doing studs and gaskets, what would you look for? I would say you have to take the heads back off to find out what's going on. I don't know how else you would be getting pressure in there. $360. Oh, for the water pump, Adrian, for that BMW. Anyone know of a reliable shop or company that flow tests heads? Buddy of mine has every single different RB head. So does he have the a 20, a 25, and a 26, and then he has the NA versions of those two? NA wants to know who to speak to. Gary, Friday I saw a BMW with a vanity plate that said LS BMW. Sounded wild. That would be cool. I'd like to have a sleeper like that. How much airflow is hurt by milling heads to 100 cc's? You might not hurt it at all. I'd have to look at the chamber to see if you milling that in some way shrouds it, but I wouldn't think that it would. And you're definitely gonna I don't know what it was to begin with. I don't know what the big block head it was to begin with, but 100 cc seems really, really small. Unless you were starting with if you were starting with a 96 to 2000, then it's already kind of there. There's 2025 and 30 heads plus all heads are separate. Okay. Oh, Travis, that's a good idea. It might be a cracked head. Yeah, and unfortunately, if where they crack, although I haven't seen those cracks go to water, but it definitely could. And the problem is that that's going to be on the combustion chamber side of the head, and you wouldn't be able to see that externally. Any issue adopting an XC274 LX setup to an F-150? The 274, if you're talking about modular Ford cams, the 274 would be a 274H and not an AH because it's a non-PI one. And the fact that it's an F-150 wouldn't matter. You're going to have to put springs in it for those heads. If you're talking about the Extreme Energy 274 cam for a 5-liter or a 351 F-150, that's a different thing. But I think you're talking about modular stuff. 2 more minutes. We'll get rid of our poll at 64% saying, yes, I would go to the treble. Despite the fact that it has dual throttle bodies, I would step up and make that happen. Finally found my first set of cracked Castec heads in person. I thought they were a myth. Can't see the crack with the naked eye. We've run some that have cracks that you could see with the naked eye between the valves, and we ran them and it was fine. KM. Oh, okay. So it's not an XE278 274AH. It's a XE274HR cam, and mine worked fine. But mine also had an aftermarket piston in it when we put that head on it. I mean, when we put that camshaft in it. I think if you're have a truck and it's a drive around truck, I think I would pick a smaller camshaft than that. Did you see a Gen 4 Coyote with a single or dual throttle body? They're trying to claim the single may be tunable. I don't know what you're talking about. Does a Gen 4 have dual throttle bodies on it? The main crack in castic heads is under the rocker stand. It leaks coolant into the oil. Okay. The cracks I've seen are in the combustion chamber. Yeah, the crack between the valves. Yeah, like I said, we've run those and not had any problem. I've seen those on the 3800 heads too. Is the Summit E303 plus too much for an F-150? I don't think so. It's that makes less power than the 274 does, but it probably would be a little bit more drivable. Although the single pattern regular E303s might be better. I was thinking of one of the smaller extreme energy cams. My head's on a 5.3, wasn't cracked around the valves. They corroded around the top water jackets on the top corners. Okay. Yeah, if it's a better deal, KM, then you gotta go with the camshaft that you gotta go with. On that note, it is time to go. I will see you guys all tonight.